Hello and welcome to the show. I'm here on Moto GP 14 to have a go at some of the career mode. I was really quite surprised with this game. There was a lot more to it than I expected, and I did quite enjoy the challenge of driving a motorbike. So I did the first couple of almost tutorial style levels in the championship and signed for one of the Honda teams. I can't remember the name of the team. So yeah, I was going to have a go at the Moto 3 category. Now the first race in the championship is at Qatar, a racetrack that I don't think I've ever seen. I know it's raced in MotoGP. I've seen bits of a MotoGP race here. Other than that, I can't think I've ever watched car races around this particular track. I'm sure it's used in some form of championship, but yeah, I've never seen this track. And on the opening lap, I did have a couple of incidences of just running a little bit wide. This track does seem to like having these sort of double apexed corners, or in fact there's a triple one further around. It does like them. This particular layout. I then got a little bit greedy on the curb, may have fallen over. Just a small amount of falling over on my first lap with the bike. Not the cleverest thing. I don't think the Honda would have been, or whatever the team name is, would have been too happy. The first thing I do with the bike is fall over after a third of a lap. doesn't fill people with confidence, but it is me on a motorbike, so I don't know why you'd sign me anyway. So yeah, as we came through qualifying, I may have forgotten we were doing qualifying and proceeded to go for a race with Marquez. We were setting similar lap times at this point, sort of being similar speed. I thought, bugger it, we'll go for it. Not necessarily conducive for a good lap time if you're arguing amongst yourself, but it is a lot more fun. There was a little bit of bumping. I don't think you would stay on a motorbike with this much bumping. Maybe you would, and I don't know. I find it unlikely. There is also an element of, I don't know quite what the performance of my bike is like compared to the other bikes, as I struggle to try and... It's a little bit fiddly, okay? I'm driving on a Xbox controller, and I struggle with precise movements on a controller. I don't know why, I've just never been a particular... Well, I can drive fine on them, but I find myself with the bikes sort of wiggling. I can't seem to hold the controller at sort of certain angles. It's just me being useless, really. But yeah, I continue to race with Marquez, having a dive up the inside towards the end of the lap. Again, I try my best to stop wiggling around, but it's, yeah, I don't know, it's the way I bloody drive. Marquez looks at the inside into the final corner. I managed to keep it around the outside, sort of covering him off as we head towards the start-finish line. Slipstreaming does make a fairly sizable difference, fairly noticeable in this game. So yeah, you definitely want to be following a bike. And of course it does give you plenty of opportunities for overtaking into the first corner here. I got a nice slipstream, could pull up just about alongside, have a big dive, maybe a little bit too bigger a dive, and that overshot a small amount. I did manage to figure out what rear brake was as well. I figured out the button to control the rear brake. Anyway, after the short one lap duel with Marquez, I went on to set the pole position lap by over 2 seconds. I was very surprised by this. I'm going to be honest, I didn't expect for my first ever race to end up on pole. My teammate was down in 23rd. So, yeah, I'm pretty impressed that I managed to get my bike around sort of 2 seconds quicker than the opposition. I was wondering if I may have had the difficulty a little bit too low. Having never played a bike game, I came to the conclusion I should probably run it on medium for a little while until I get the hang of driving something very, very different. But I didn't need to worry too much. Off the line, I could not launch the bike. I don't know quite how to do this. As a few times, games have got strange ways of launching. I cannot get the bike off the line quickly. No matter what I do, I cannot get it off as quick as the vehicles around. I don't know if a small amount of that is the performance of the bike itself, or whether it's just me doing something wrong. Either way, I was bound to 7th after the first few corners. I could do a nice double overtake though into the first of the double apexed corners. I was pretty pleased to have got the overtake done. One thing I do like about the bikes is there seems to be, you can overtake pretty much anywhere with them. There's, unlike with a lot of races with vehicles, with cars I should say, where there's a sort of a couple of good overtaking spots on a track. With the bikes I was finding places to overtake near enough everywhere, which made for an interesting race. Now, unfortunately, by around the halfway stage, I had lost touch with the lead 3. It was a little bit odd. in this. I could go very quickly in qualifying. I could go, as you saw, 2 seconds quicker than the field, as funnily enough Marquez goes past. However, when it came to the race, I was still setting similar lap times to the times I was doing in qualifying, maybe a bit slower, sometimes a bit quicker. The AI suddenly picked up an awful lot of speed, and they were going much quicker. Normally you go quicker in qualifying than you do in the race. I'm not quite sure how this works, but yeah, that's what was happening. And I was finding myself in 4th and really having to fight. Really having to fight for 4th place. Marquez was quicker than me. I'll be honest, I was holding him up and doing the best I could to try and hold him off for the remaining couple of laps. He squeezes past on the final corner. Now I'm in the slipstream though, I can get a little bit of an advantage. There is a bike behind me. I was in the slightly difficult position of I want to be attacking, but I've got to be very careful as the bike behind cruises up alongside. We're going to go 3 wide into turn 1, which is always scary, going 3 wide. A little bit easier on a bike that's considerably narrower. I could find that there could be sort of more multiple overtakes on the bikes because they're smaller in size than with cars. And I had held on to 4th position for now. You can see, I'm just looking at the gap. There was a huge gap to the bikes in front in only a small number of laps. Marquez was trying to be brave around the outside. In the end, he just scared me into outbraking myself, and he manages to do a cutback, gets to the inside. I'm determined to try and keep this position. I go just run a little bit wide over the curbs, keep it under control. Big dive into the next corner. Still just about managing to get it stopped, but as I am running a little bit wide, Marquez does a nice cutback. The rider behind will have had a good view of this this entire battle. I squeeze myself up the inside, and we do a cut, or Marquez does a cutback halfway through the corner, which is quite impressive. I tried everything I could to keep in front. I just couldn't. I didn't quite have the speed. And once I fell out of range, once I got to the stage where I could no longer overtake him into a corner, that's when I was in a little bit of trouble. Because I just didn't have the speed to keep up. I could hold him behind, I could slow him down enough to just about keep in front of him. But I couldn't catch him once he was past. And yeah, once he got to this sort of range, there was nothing I could do. Also, at some point I ran a bit wide, but fairly wide in fact, on one of the corners. And the game does have perhaps a little harsh penalty system at times. I got a 1.5-second time penalty, which is added on to my total time. Despite the fact that I beat the guy in 6th place, it would drop me behind him. So there is, yeah, it is a little bit harsh on the penalties. I got to be more careful. Basically, was what I learnt from the first race. Still, for my first ever race on here in the championship, I can't complain too much. A little bit disappointed to have dropped so far back through the field, having started on pole. But 6th place is not too bad. It's not too bad at all for my opening race. I also beat my teammate by quite a long way, and I was the highest placed Brit. Can't complain too much about that. Of course, the championship results being the first round are exactly the same, 6th in the championship. And on the constructors' side, KTM led from Honda, and then there are some other people that I've never heard of. Our second race went to the Circuit of the Americas, a track that I actually know. This one is in Formula 1. I've driven around in a Formula 1 car. Admittedly, bike is a bit different, but I do know the track. Unfortunately, it was raining. I'd hoped not to have to deal with rain quite yet. I would like to have got used to the bikes a bit more before it came to dealing with a wet track. It wasn't actually raining at the start of the race, and the commentatory person said that it was one of these dodgy sessions. It could get drier, it could rain more. Nobody really knew quite what the weather was going to do, so I went out straight away to see what I make of the track. Circuit of the Americas, a little bit interesting track, this one. I like half of it. The first half is excellent. I really like this opening section. There's some lovely fast flowing corners that it didn't take me too long to get the hang of with a bike, although I did struggle. I did get it a little bit wrong on this opening lap. I didn't want to be going over there particularly, but yeah, I really like this initial section. It's a lovely piece of racetrack. However, after we go down the back straight, I don't like the track very much. After that, it goes into this sort of slow, twisty section. I struggle with Formula 1 car there, let alone when it comes to a motorbike. So this opening section was pretty damn good. The bike slid around a little bit more, but it wasn't really that bad. I think these bikes aren't particularly powerful. I don't know. I honestly don't know enough about them, but these are the sort of the starter bikes, if you like, for the MotoGP. So they're not ferociously powerful, they're not that difficult to drive. It slides a small amount more in the wet, but it's not very much. I wasn't having to be very, very tentative with the throttle. On a couple of slow corners, you had to be aware that the bike might slide. On the most part, though, you could just chuck it around as if it was dry almost. The stopping distances may have been a little bit longer, but all in all, it wasn't particularly difficult to drive. As we come up to this section, this is where I really struggle. I can never get the line sorted through these corners for whatever reason. This next one in particular, it always looks as if it's faster than it is. It's sort of it's like a sort of a double apexy thing going on as well. Again, it's another corner that I don't know. It's a strange one. Takes some getting used to, and again, we've got another fairly similar to one of the corners at Qatar. This one actually around here, you saw the bike slides a little bit when it's at a very low speed, sort of low speed exit of the corner. But on the rest of these corners, there wasn't too much of a problem. Ran a little bit wide through the second to last corner, not really ideal. To be honest, it wasn't the best of laps. It was a bit scruffy in places. I ran over a curb at one point and was slightly off the track. And as we run towards the line, it was to be, though, my fastest lap that I would set in qualifying, which surprised me. I didn't really expect that. And as we come up towards the first corner here, I forgot that we were on a bike and turned in while it was wet, and I fell off a little bit, which was less than I did. I very nearly did a stupid thing when setting off as well. I nearly made a mess. So I didn't go faster, nobody else was going faster, and with 10 minutes left to go, I thought, well, we'll go out again. Maybe track conditions have improved slightly. That was the idea. They hadn't. It had started raining again. It wasn't the heaviest of rain. It wasn't sort of thunderous downpours. The track wasn't sort of covered in standing water. It wasn't horrendous rain, but it was enough. It was enough. I could go quickly through the first... I was going quicker through the first couple of sections, as you can see by the little timey thing. Thank you to the people who told me what the colours mean. I now understand it a bit more. I could go very, very quickly through the first couple of sections, but this final one, as well as me struggling with this final sector, it was also quite wet, and I couldn't... with a combination of both those factors, I just couldn't go quicker. I think I was about 4 or 5 tenths up as we came into this final sector. The first part of it, I lost all of that, so I was on exactly the same time as my best lap. This corner here, you can see there's noticeably more standing water. Can't take as much speed as I could beforehand. Yeah, it's got quite a bit wetter up towards the second to last corner. Again, ran even wider on this particular one. It was just a wetter track. I couldn't really do a huge amount about it as we come into the final corner. A bit neater final corner, but I couldn't carry the speed, couldn't put the power down. Again, it wasn't horrendously sliding. It just didn't have enough grip really. Couldn't carry the speed through the corners, and in the end, I lost nearly 9 tenths of a second in the final sector. So yeah, nobody could go quicker than their opening runs, which meant I found myself on pole yet again. To an extent, this is a bit of luck because of the weather, I think. I was the first one out on track. I think I got the driest track to drive around in. My teammate was well down the order again. So yeah, I found myself not quite as big a margin. Only 1.6 seconds. Still not too bad. Onto the race. It had dried up. There was cloudy. I don't think the game didn't tell me there was a chance of rain. So I was expecting it to be a dry race. I may have ballsed up the start slightly by pressing the wrong button. I may have slightly forgotten what gear up is, which is not a normal problem. Also got a big slide under braking into the first corner. I got a bump from behind that then bumped me into somebody in front. It wasn't the greatest of starts that I've ever done to a race of any sort, really. I try and fit through a very small gap. I may have run into Mr. Kent slightly, but never mind, we are okay. It's not too bad. I also then find myself across the curb again. I hadn't quite got the hang of that. Now my bike actually had a lot more grip. Surprise, surprise, I found myself with the Alex crew. With Marquez and Rins trying to go around the outside of this particular corner. Again, there was a little bit of bumping. Amazingly, I found myself back up into third very briefly. I got the overtake. Couldn't quite hold it on the exit of the corner. Again, could carry great speed through this opening sector. I was far faster than anybody else through the opening section. Get to the inside at the hairpin. Couldn't really get the drive out of the corner quite as well. I would have liked to have been closer to the front too. I could have had a nice tow all the way down the straight. As it happens, I didn't have anybody to, and sure enough, Marquez is gone, and his teammate, I think they're teammates, was very close behind. Now that he was in front, could do a little bit of slipstreaming, up to 241 kilometers an hour. That's as fast as I'm going to get this bike. Missed the corner slightly, and the pair of them go past, and somebody else has gone past with a little bump. I'm back up the inside of him and into 5th, over the curb, all out of position there, which is less than ideal. As I said in the first race, it's very easy if you make a slight mistake on the opening lap with everybody so bunched up. You can lose a whole heap of places, and as the field gets a bit spread out, you can really screw yourself over if you get caught in battles further back. This is where I did struggle around this particular corner on the opening lap. Again, I think there may be a small amount of bike performance coming in here with them being on better bikes. They can take more speed. That was my fault. No fault of the bike on that one. I outbraked myself. Very nearly had a big accident. Didn't realise there was somebody quite so close as I tried to rejoin the track. For most of this race, it wasn't hugely exciting. I quickly worked my way back up into 5th, and then I spent most of the time lapping the track on my own. I could be phenomenally quick through this first section. I could make up about 2 seconds on the bikes around through that opening section. However, I lost a lot of it on the final section, so I caught right up to the back of these guys again, having fallen back while I was busy battling with 6th and 7th. I caught back up towards the end of the race, but the problem is that now I'm right behind them as we leave my section. As we leave the nice section, the section I'm good at, I've just caught up with them. I have a big dive at the hairpin, and again can't quite make the move stick. But now I'm in the middle of the battle, and I'm going up towards where I struggle, and I'm too far back for a slipstream, which is not particularly helpful. Funnily enough, it's Marquez again, who who I've been battling with for all of these blooming first 2 races. I have a big dive into the hairpin. I got the move done. Unfortunately, I couldn't stop in time for Rins. May have bumped into him slightly. He didn't care. It made absolutely no difference to him. I very nearly fell off. Managed to keep it together. I did run out quite wide, and the game got slightly angry at me and gave me a big penalty, which I'm not sure is really necessary. I did lose quite a lot of time on my own accord falling off the track there, and I didn't really affect Rins in any way, shape or form. So, yeah, as I said, game can be a little bit harsh on the old penalty front, and by the time it came to the final lap, I couldn't make up the time. I'd lost too much by outbraking myself and fallen back, stuck in 5th, and I think I'd run a little bit wide as well on this final lap at one point. I had a fairly hefty penalty time to be added on. Fortunately, I was quick enough through the opening section and quick enough over the course of the lap that I had pulled a big enough gap back to the bikes behind. So I'd made an improvement on this round, up to 5th. Can't complain too much. Again, I would have liked to have been on the podium. If I could get the final sector as well as I could get the opening sector, I would have probably won, because I was so quick through that opening bit. But as it was, 5th place was as good as I could do. Still, second round, I got 2 decent points finishes. That was better than I expected. If I'm honest, my teammate was down in 24th. Team should be fairly happy again with my performance in the Riders' Championship. I dropped slightly to 7th, but it was kind of an equal 7th. It was all fairly close, and constructors, KTM were still leading from Honda. Our third round went to an Argentinian track. Again, a place that I've never driven around. I don't think I've ever seen this track before, so it was qualifying was a bit of a learning experience. And if I'm honest, it wasn't the most exciting of qualifying sessions. I didn't really have any interesting races with anybody that I'm qualifying with, that is. I proceeded to go around the outside of some people's. It was cloudy. There was a small chance of rain. I think there was a small threat of rain that never actually materialised through the qualifying session. Trying to go around the outside of somebody into this final corner. I couldn't quite get this. I guess it's kind of a second to last corner. We've got this thing here as a final corner. I couldn't quite get that second to last corner right. I did struggle on that bit a little bit, and also the actual final corner onto the start-finish straight. That's quite evil. Now, it's a deceptively evil corner. It looks easy, and if you get it right, it's not that hard. It's not sort of hard to take it flat out. But if you end up out of position, you can't take it flat out, and then you fall off the track. It's quite a nasty corner. that one. Despite the overtakes on that particular lap, that was to be my quickest lap of qualifying, and I would find myself on pole. Yet again, I was 2 seconds quicker than the bikes around. I led the Alex battle, but onto the race, you can have a guess where this one is going. I was pretty pleased with my start. I thought I got off the line pretty well on this one, and still 2 bikes have gone past. However, the stream of bikes hadn't. I'd found myself in 3rd very briefly. The one time I could get off the line, and everybody's gone. That one wasn't my fault. I got bumped. Admittedly, I was a tiny bit slow into the corner. I took it a slightly wonky line, but the bike drove into the back of me, and I may have fallen off a little bit. So now, after my quite good qualifying session, I found myself at the back of the pack on a track that I don't really know. Also, not a massive fan particularly of this track. There are a couple of good corners. The rest of it is not really for me. I had a lot of work to do. I hadn't fallen too far back, which is always good. I did a humongous dive around the outside. Not really the best line, but it worked. I got past somebody. Now there is a long line of bikes. On the opening lap, it's quite scary when you're back here, and there's just this sea of bikes in front of you to try and find a way past, especially when you're quicker than quite a lot of them. I could brake quite a lot later than the bikes in front of me that scared the crap out of me when I came into that corner. Again, I could get good drive out of this particular section. I may have got a little bit brave in this particular manoeuvre, and perhaps a little bit greedy as we came across the curbs, as again I tried to position myself and got splattered. And for the second time in the race, I was dumped to the back of the field. A little bit more my fault, that one. I was a little bit greedier. I was sort of on the curb. It would have been nice to have had a little bit more space, but yeah, I can't really apportion too much blame to the other bike on that one. I may have given somebody a big nudge in the second to last corner. I again caught up to the field. Certainly a top 10 finish was very unlikely, as I said, once you get caught up in battles, you can lose quite a lot of time very easily. With the slipstream, it's very easy for somebody to re-overtake you, I found. So yeah, a top 10 position was unlikely for me here, but it did mean I had plenty of overtaking to do. I had plenty of action in this one as I go up the middle of. I don't think I've done that before. Going up the middle of 2 vehicles, and somehow I made everything stick. I also got a great run onto this back straight as I pull up, sort of in the slipstream, pull to the side. I was trying to stay in the slipstream with the pair in front to keep myself in the running, if you like, for the overtake. Couldn't quite do it, though the bike for some reason just slowed down a little bit. I guess he got scared of the vehicles in front, and then I proceeded to take the 3 of them under braking. I had nice brakes in this bike. I could do some late braking going on as I moved myself up into 28th position. Further on, I'd found my teammate. First time I'd seen my teammate in one of these. I presume that's my teammate, or my rival, or whoever it is. I found him in, I think, 22nd place. So on the sort of second to last lap, I thought I would join in the fun. Was struggling with that corner. I did that a couple of times, as you can see by a small penalty, and now it's telling me off for bumping over. I didn't gain an advantage. I bumped over the curb. So yeah, it was onto the second to last lap that the action was to happen. Again, I could take a lot of speed onto this back straight. I could get a lot of speed onto here as we catch up to the group in front. They're trying to go 3 wide as I'm catching them. It's going to be almost 4 wide at one point. My teammate in the end backs out of it. So I would like to have seen 4 wide into this particular corner. Again, as I said, I could be pretty good on the brakes. I could brake pretty late, a little bit too late. I think I'm just pushing it on under braking a little bit too much on some of these corners, but I'm still learning the blooming game. So yeah, I'm not falling off the track as much as I thought I would, if I'm honest. Not falling off the bike as much either. My teammate and the people around him did linger a little bit, did pose a small threat, but it wasn't long before I could pull away from them. And on to the final lap, I caught the group of vehicles in front. There was, I think I've only got a few more quarters to go on this one, and I was worried I wasn't really going to have a huge amount of time. As I said, most quarters were overtaking opportunities I was finding on here. So I thought I could stand a chance of getting a couple of them. I thought the bike at the head of this was a little bit too far off. One of the riders did a little bit of motocross on the on the grass there, and we were all nose to tail coming up towards one of the corners that had caused me a little bother earlier on. Luckily, I could simply outbrake them, go around the outside, and with a very good run through this section, I was up into 19th, and 18th wasn't as far ahead as I had expected him to be. I was a bit of a mess through the next corner though. It was quite a long way back, but I was determined. I knew I was good under braking. I could brake very late into this corner, and he left a gap that he promptly closed. I may have sort of bumped him out of the way a little bit on that one. I thought he was going to leave space, and then he didn't. I got the position. There was a little bit of a bump as we have a drag race across the line. However, I managed to recover to 18th place despite two falls on the opening lap. Again, pole position to 18th does sound slightly disappointing, and blooming Marquez went on to win the race, but I'm managing to work my way back up through the field. I was only 21 seconds off Marquez. Again, I'm not too displeased. A little bit annoyed about the first punt off. I actually had a fairly decent start this time round. I dropped down to 9th in the championship with 19 points. That's where I got 19 from. Still, again, better than I expected after the first 3 races, and KTM continued to lead Honda. After round 3, I got to have a look for a new team. So going on team performance here, the little bar. Higher up the bar, the better. I presume as you go through the game, you earn XP, and I think the more XP you earn, then the higher teams become unlocked. I was trying to see what the highest team I had that was unlocked. I don't know why some of the low teams are locked. There was a couple that had lowish team performance that were locked. I'm not quite sure why you'd want to do that. But in the end, I decided to. I think this is like an attempting to join your. I guess your manager approaches the team or something. I'm not quite sure how that works, but we will find out next time if I am riding for a new team. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.